more insight, more understanding. This is Fox 23 News in Depth with Rick Marino.
We have double in-depth for you tonight. We'll get to the terror arrest with Tulsa ties coming up a bit later on. But first, the current government shutdown became the second longest government shutdown in U.S. history, and some real pain could be felt in the coming days. Take a look. On Friday, federal workers, furloughed or not, are supposed to be paid. The government, if it is still shut down, will not issue paychecks, however. It will be the first missed paychecks since the start of this shutdown. Then, if the government shutdown is still happening on Saturday, November 1st, the U.S. Department of Agriculture informed Oklahoma and other states that it will have to suspend SNAP benefits, the modern-day equivalent of food stamps. 1 in 5 Oklahomans use food stamps to help buy their groceries. So with two big things that help people pay for their basic life needs possibly not happening, and the chance the government is shut down for a long time, we have to ask, can this hurt the economy for all of us, regardless of if we are tied to federal programs? Joining me on the program tonight to speak unedited is BOK's financial chief investment strategist, Steve-Wyett, with what the numbers and data show us. Steve, thanks for joining me. I wanted to bring you on the program because I am interested in, we have people who are working who aren't being paid. We have people who can't access their benefits. What is a government shutdown going to do for the economy as a whole?
Well, it's not going to do anything for the economy necessarily. The question is, what's it going to maybe do to the economy? And there's where, Rick, look, I understand emotions are running high during this period of time. We see theatrics and statements from both sides of the political spectrum on why this is occurring and why it's not, and all of the things that might happen. But we wanted to step back. We looked at kind of some history of government shutdowns. This is not the first shutdown that we've had. In fact, since 1976, Rick, we've had 22 government shutdowns. This is number 23. So this isn't new necessarily. And what was interesting as we looked at that data, there were like 9 of those 22 that occurred when the president, the Senate, and the House of Representatives were both of the same party. And that's occurred both on the Democrat side when they've controlled the White House and Congress, and the Republican side. And if we look at it, it's been about 13 Republican presidents, 9 Democratic presidents. The average length is only about 8 days. That's where this one feels different. It is longer. This is the 21st day of the shutdown. It's now the 3rd longest. If it goes one more day, it will tie the 2nd, which occurred during Bill Clinton's presidency. And if it goes any longer, it's going to threaten the longest shutdown, which was during President Trump's first term. So this is not new, but it's always uncomfortable when we go through these periods of time. Now, the other thing that we wanted to do, Rick, is kind of look at the impact on the stock market. What happened to stocks and the economy, thinking short term during the shutdown and then maybe 12 months in the future. And what we found is that about 9 of the 22 during the shutdown, the S&P 500 declined, but only marginally, like 30 basis points. But if we look 12 months out, the only 3 times was the S&P negative over the next 12 months, and the average gain was 12.7%. So I think what we can take from that is that in the end, and we're going to get through this, we're going to find a way to solve this government shutdown. Look, it's you've got people working without getting paid. I've been on a lot of planes lately, Rick. I'm a little, I see the TSA agents and I think about the FAA employees up in the tower. I want them on the top of their game when I'm traveling. So we're seeing as people work longer without getting paid. You've got the military going through some of this as well. Congress, by the way, they voted something like 9 times on this continuing resolution that they haven't been able to get that passed. But on the balance, as we think longer term, we're going to get through this, and this isn't necessarily a big long-term negative for the economy. It does bring to the fore some of the issues that are kind of contentious, if you will, between the Republican and the Democratic parties as we think about how we move forward.
Are we doing any damage when it comes to, people can't pay their bills, SNAP benefits are at risk, some people are going to go look for food elsewhere. Does that damage the economy when people are late for their bills and don't have that income even temporarily?
Yeah, sure it does, Rick. And this is where, I mean, there's a big difference. So if you just look across the population, big difference. But it's like the bottom half of the income earners out there are pretty much living paycheck to paycheck. So it's really hard on them. Inflation is hard on them. This is why you and I have talked about the importance of the Fed getting inflation back to 2%. That's a longer term goal and something that still needs to be out there. But I think this is where the political pressure will really start to ratchet up, Rick, is that this Friday will be the first full pay period that government employees will miss their first full paycheck. Okay, that's a big deal. Towards the end of the month, you've got rent, you've got home, your mortgage payment coming due, not to mention groceries, electricity, all the other things that you have going on. But you mentioned the SNAP and WIC programs, which they've been operating to this point. But a recent report showed that their funding might run out as early as November the 1st. We have over 20% of our population that's getting SNAP benefits, Rick. So that would be put a lot of pressure. There's a lot of other entities out there that do provide services for food, but food banks and that type of thing. But man, that would put a lot of pressure on people that, you know, the hard part is they're like, what? I've got nothing to do with this. And so I think that that's the other issue as we think about this, Rick. You know, I would go, Moody's just downgraded us from a AAA rated country to a AA plus. They joined Fitch and S&P, which had downgraded us before. But Fitch and Moody's both, one of the reasons that they pointed to the downgrade, we're not going to default on our debt. That's not what I'm saying. This isn't a crisis of the economy's not going to collapse. Pretty much anything, any negative impact we see will be reversed once we get the government open. And in past shutdowns, those that haven't been paid have gotten that back pay. So we wouldn't anticipate a big deal there. But what the ratings agency pointed to is that we've got a dysfunctional governing process. And this is what a dysfunctional governing process looks like. We're not doing anything to improve the opinion of the ratings agencies on our ability to effectively manage our budgetary process. This doesn't look good for anybody. There's plenty of middle ground for us to get to. I think the hard part, Rick, for you and I both, and for most everybody else, we're just in a pretty polarized environment. And this idea of a compromise as we try to move forward, man, that's been hard to get to. But again, we think we're going to find a way to get that done. It becomes too costly from a political standpoint for both sides to stand there and do nothing at this point.
Let's say this thing breaks the record. Does that do more damage than if it solves tomorrow? If this wraps up tomorrow?
Short answer, yes. Every day the list goes longer, the more risks there are, Rick, the more potential for longer term permanent damage. Look, again, we've kind of already done some permanent reputational damage, if we want to look at it that way from a governmental oversight standpoint. But yes, this is not, I say, historically, we can point and look at this that it hasn't had a big long-term impact on the economy. But you know, the current administration has taken a little different stance. They were taking furloughs and turning those into layoffs, where there was a recent federal judge that kind of put a stop to that at the present time. But the more you do this kind of stuff, and again, this is a bipartisan issue. I'm not picking on one side or the other. Both sides have kind of have pursued similar tactics. But the longer this goes, the more risk that something that is small now becomes bigger later. And so I think it just behooves all of us, bring the temperature down a little bit. We can ease back on the rhetoric on both sides of the political aisle. Let's remember that we're all trying to move the economy forward, and ultimately we all understand that having the government shut down is not what's going to help us move the economy forward. We're going to have some hard conversations. We're going to have to, the specifics of this shutdown seem to be around the pandemic era subsidies that were put on the Affordable Care Act, which did lead to some pretty significant increases in enrollment in the Affordable Care Act. But when those were passed, they were meant to be temporary. They're going to expire in December of this year. And I think, again, stepping back from the specifics, Rick, we're just in a point where cutting spending or raising revenue, be that taxes or tariffs or however you want to do it, man, that is just really hard. And so our leaders in Washington, they're going to need some strong leadership, and they're going to have to work hard to come to compromises to help move us forward. But I think we can do that.
Anything else you'd like to mention, Steve?
You know, Rick, in the end, what I would say for your listeners, for people that are worried about what's going on in the markets, don't change your plan. This isn't anything, again, looking historically, that has caused any longer-term damage. We can make that assessment as we move forward. It's hard not having some of the data. Look, the FOMC is going to meet next week. They're going to cut rates again by 25 basis points. They're not getting any information. But certainly you look at the economy, and the shutdown isn't improving the economy. So the Fed was already set to cut interest rates as they meet next week. They're going to do that. They're probably going to cut rates again in their December meeting. So there are reasons to be way more optimistic. We'll get through this. We look for economic growth to accelerate as we get to the first half of next year. Consumers are going to have a lot bigger tax refund season next year than what they had this year. There's a lot of good stuff from a corporate tax standpoint. So we think the economy is going to do better. Let's just get through this period, and then we'll be in a lot better position to move forward. But stay with your plan. No reason to change that.